Hey, Ivana.
Hey Elsa, how's it going?
It's well. So excited to have you today and to hear about the founding story of our Playfield. Do you want to
Yeah.
start with a quick intro of what Playfield is and how it got started?
Yeah, 100%. So, super excited to be here. I guess for folks listening or tuning in, my name is Ivana. I'm the founder of Playfield. We just launched in April of this year. So, we're a brand new company and we are making lives easier for modern pet parents. So, we're starting out with our own proprietary dog walking kit, which is essentially this hyper multifunctional modular dog walking kit and treat pouch. And people on the internet seem to really like it. We're starting off direct to consumer and then hoping to grow as fast as we can.
Yeah, I've seen videos of the product on Instagram and it is insane. It
Oh,
literally is like Doraemon's bag. It can contain everything. Tell me a little bit more about that.
yeah. So honestly, it was born out of my own challenge as a pet owner. So, we have a dog named Bailey. She's my whole life. And I just felt like every time I was taking her out, which is at least 3 times a day, I found I was switching my things in and out of bags. And it doesn't feel like that big of a problem. But when you're doing this 3 times a day, I feel like the friction really compounds. And I was using the Lululemon crossbody bag, which I think a lot of dog moms use. But I felt like it just wasn't, I couldn't hold everything with me, couldn't bring water with me. I didn't like contaminating the bag with treats. So I didn't want to continually use little Ziploc bags as well to store the. I just felt like it was so wasteful and the bags would break. And so, yeah, I just had this idea and it started off as a sketch on paper. And then, you know how it goes, right? It just like starts somewhere, you start building on it. And before you know it, you have a company that you've launched.
It always starts as an idea, be like, why, why don't I make something like it? And then it just like runs from there. So that's
Yeah.
really exciting.
Thanks.
And it sounds like your target audience is pet moms, correct? Dog moms.
Yeah, well, I would say pet parents.
Okay.
So modern pet parents, usually it's probably more of like the millennial pet parent. And I say this because I am one. So it's
Yeah.
easy for me to, you kind of solve your own problem. And that's where the product is born. But it's really anyone who is constantly on the go. They take their dog with them everywhere they go. They also lead probably quite busy lives. They might be jet setters. And they also want to look good, right? I think there's a lot of pet products on the market. Like you can go to Amazon, look up treat pouch, and they all kind of look the same. So we wanted something that was aesthetically different, aesthetically pleasing, and like a good reflection of your personality that also melded really well into your everyday.
And since you've launched and since April, what would you say is one surprising thing that you've learned about your target audience, pet parents?
Um, yeah, so I think there's a lot of things in the beginning. Like we definitely tried to run focus groups, right? Because you never want to launch or invest a ton of money until you know, hey, there's a real problem and our solution actually addresses this.
Mm,
I think also until you sell a product, you don't actually know for sure, right? So I think when we launched to friends and family at first, and then we started selling to strangers, and it was kind of that pivotal moment where you're like, oh my gosh, like a stranger actually came to our website, bought the product, and has used it and has told us now that they really love it. That was very validating. And then to also see the reception that we've gotten on social media has also been incredibly validating. So it's sort of that process of, you can sort of run focus groups and test as much as you want, but until there's been a real exchange of money and someone has the product, then they can tell you, is this worth the value? Is it worth the price that they paid? And so far, we've gotten really good positive feedback.
Was there something that you thought was totally gonna be what people love, but then turns out to be the opposite?
Actually, funny enough, like with the colors. Yes. So when we launched, so Playfield is actually a very colorful brand. Like our website's really colorful, our brand colors are also really colorful, but the three colorways that we came out with are kind of we've got two very neutral colors and one colorful color. So when we launched, I thought for sure people will be drawn to the bright blue and then probably buy the black or buy the sandstone color because the whole like millennial beige aesthetic I think is still it's still in. And so I was expecting that. But the reality turned out to be our periwinkle bag is actually our bestseller.
What color is that?
Oh, it's this one. It's like a bluish,
Ah,
kind of
okay.
like a bluish color. It's
Okay.
really pretty in person. Like the strap is kind of
Yeah.
shiny. It's almost like a slightly iridescent, or there's like a sheen to it. But yeah, I mean, people see this in person and they love the color. So that was also really, really reassuring for us because we definitely want to do a bunch of colorful like colors in the future.
Yeah, now that I'm seeing it, it's really nice. It's kind of like not exactly baby blue and like a really unique shade of blue.
Yeah, it's a nice like unique color. You can look at the belt clip too.
Yeah.
It's and this one's this one's a little beat up because my friend's cat actually got a hold of it and she sort of
Oh,
ruptured the whole thing. But generally, they're really it's made of like a durable nylon, so it
yeah.
lasts the time.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, we recently launched some cremation necklaces, and I tried to get a cat in the photo shoot, and it did
Yeah,
not turn out well for the cremation necklace,
no, he's like
but it
no
was a cute
thank
shot.
you.
Yeah, it was like immediately playing around and eating.
Yeah, exactly.
That is so cool, and I want to hear a bit more about the product development process because as you know, I have a memorial product brand, and it like what I envision in my mind about what like how products are made is completely different from like how it's actually made. And I feel like in the process, there's like just so much learning for a new entrepreneur out there. So what was the process like for you going from that sketch on the paper to your first commercial batch?
Yeah. So, great question. I think, the process was slow for me because I frankly didn't know where to start. So, for context, I come from the big tech world. I was in sales and partnerships at Google for many years. And it's very different working with like a digital tech product, like building an app versus actually bringing something physical to life. So, initially with the Bailey kit, it started off as a sketch on paper. I tried to make my own prototypes. I have a sewing machine. I tried to sew it. It was hideous. Like it was really so ugly. I was like, okay, I need to find a professional. And even then, I didn't know where to start. So I was like, okay, where do I find a product designer? So I did a couple Google searches. I found several different product design firms and set up calls and interviews with them. I also went to Upwork and looked for some freelance product designers. So I had like a pretty long list of folks I wanted to talk to. I put together sort of like a design brief with a mood board and conceptually what I wanted and tried to see who could work with me. Candidly, the product design firms were just a little out of budget for me. I think, they were starting at 20K.
For one design?
It was like they would do the research, they would do competitive analysis. It was a whole package deal. So a lot of them were just a bit too expensive for me. So I ended up finding someone. I found him on Upwork, but we ended up connecting on Coraflort. Coraflot, I think, is the website where you can find a lot of product designers. You can find their portfolio. So I could see that he had done a ton of great work. He had worked with North Face. He used to work at North Face, and he had done work for other brands. He had worked for Bays, the Shea Mitchell brand as well. So I was like, okay, I
Nice.
think like aesthetically, there's alignment here. I liked that he was a veteran in the outdoor bag industry. He had been one for over 20 years. So we got to work and I shared my initial conceptual designs with him. There was a bit of back and forth, making sure, we were getting things quite right. And it all started off as a sketch on paper, which I would then, or he would create like a CAD model
Hmm.
or like a Model
Like
9.
3D. Yeah.
Yeah, 3D. And then I would print it out. I would go to the dog park. I would shop it around. I would try to get some real-time feedback without biasing people. So really asking, what were problems that they felt like they were encountering pet owners at the dog park. And then I would show them the design to see like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, have you seen anything like this before? What would be some dream features? So it was a long iterative process, probably took like a few months before we were like, okay, let's actually move forward now. I think we have a good sense of what we want to create. And he actually had a friend who was a manufacturer overseas in Vietnam. They had worked together like way back when at North Face. So they'd known each other a very long time. He was doing smaller scale production. So I agreed to work with them, like had met them virtually and really liked their energy and really liked how they were conducting business. So yeah, so we kind of came to an agreement. Got started on the prototyping, which, as you know, also takes a very long time. So, it's like it's kind of determining what materials you want. They're sourcing from many different suppliers, and then when they come up with a prototype, they ship it to you, right? So they'd FedEx it over. I'd come, check it out, test it, take it to focus groups, shop it around, really give it some, like actually take it for a good test run, and then make changes, iterative process. And so over a long period of time, eventually got to a place where like, okay, I think this is really coming together. I think this is what we want. Started the color testing process as well. So I don't know if you've had to do that for your business. It's a bit different. I guess you're dealing with like different materials, but for us,
I
we had,
probably should have done testing, but it was all like my intuition. This is gonna
yeah.
work. I'm gonna do it. But I think the focus group is really the right way to do it.
No, honestly, I think like intuition is kind of it's key, right? Because I think just the same, I've definitely had people who are like, oh, but like I have the Lululemon bag for that, right? Or like, oh, I don't know if I would need something so complicated or so, I don't know if I would pay that amount for it. But then just the same, there's people who are like, yeah, I would definitely like $100, no brainer, or they'd even quote like higher prices than that. So it was kind of cool to see just the spectrum of folks and what their feedback would be, and then trying to figure out like where you actually sit in that land.
And I think what is so helpful is that your product designer actually had a good relationship with a manufacturer. I think that is like probably luck, but also that also
Mhm.
shows that you chose your designer really well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because I've had people ask me before how I found my manufacturer, and truthfully, I didn't actually talk to very many. I don't think I even talked to any other ones beyond the one that I'm working with now. So that really was built out of a relationship, and I think for anyone who might be interested in looking for a manufacturer, especially in the textile space. I know that there are some shows that you can go to, like there's Outdoor Retailer in Salt Lake City. There's the like materials show in Portland, and I think one on the East Coast. Sometimes the manufacturers will fly there, so you can actually meet them in person. I think that's really important, making sure there's good rapport and just trying to see if like this is someone you can trust and work with and communicate well with, right? Because a lot of the work that we did was virtual through WhatsApp, through, Hangouts like this, and having them ship stuff over to me. So sometimes things can get lost in translation. So it's really important to have like a clear channel of communication.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And what is generally the minimum order quantity that this factory has?
Yeah. So for us, it's actually pretty low, I think, relative to what's standard in the industry. Per product, per colorway, it's 600,
Okay.
like 600 units. So it's pretty
Yes.
low. Um, and then the other thing to take into consideration is it's not just MOQs with the manufacturer, but suppliers will also have their own MOQ.
Mm,
So if you're ordering like specific fabric, which we did, right? Like we chose like a very specific color that we had. It was like essentially kind of made to order.
mm.
Um, and so for that, there are MOQs for the yardages. And if you don't hit that yardage, then you have to pay a surcharge.
Okay, that's good to know. And at what point did your product designer kind of leave you in the hands of the factory, or has he or she stayed on as the in-between person?
So I think we kind of like transitioned. I ended up building like a really strong relationship with the manufacturer. I had a point of person there that I would work with pretty regularly. And when it came to sort of like little tweaks, they were really at my discretion of like, no, I want to use this material. Actually, I want to go back to this, or oh, let's change this one thing. In which case, I would work hand in hand with the manufacturer because at that point, they had the technical specification and could make little changes.
That's fair. And do you have any recommendation as to whether startups should have, let's say a contract in place to make sure that the quality is of a certain standard, and if there are any defects that you find with the shipment, then they'll remake it for you?
You know, um, probably. I think I'm so green with this that honestly, I think the only thing I had in the beginning was just like a standard NDA to get the conversation started. And then we had a contract related to kind of the working relationship. But Nothing specifically detailing, the quality of work and what the expectation would be if
Mm,
things didn't meet that standard. The other thing I would say though is, I was pretty close to the entire process, like meeting with the team. When we came closer to actual production, I was meeting with the team like on Hangouts at least once a week. We were talking on WhatsApp all the time. And then I did actually fly out in December during production to Vietnam and I visited the factory in person. So I got to see just like, how's the quality? How are things coming along? And they were very transparent about their kind of like defective percentage, which was very low. So their standard for quality is really high. There's really good quality control. So I think that gave me peace of mind. And yeah, I think trust goes a long way there. So I don't know actually if there's like a better way to approach it. There probably is. But I did not go down that route.
yeah, it sounds like you really got a good supplier. I think the
Yeah.
reason I asked is because I've worked with, good manufacturers, but also bad ones, where it's like
Ooh,
close
yeah.
to 100% defect rate, and they would not want to take responsibility. So that's
Oh,
kind of my mode now is like, how, like, even though I really trust the
right.
supplier that I'm talking to, I would try to make sure there's some agreement in place. But yeah, it's really great that this supplier is so good and so experienced, supplied North Face, which says a lot. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to be interested in in an intro after this.
Probably. I'm curious, actually, going to your point, like you've seen some suppliers maybe not, you know, um, come to what you were expecting. So, what would you say like you should be detailed in the agreement moving forward?
I would say the first is a defect rate
Okay.
maximum, and if the batch goes above that defect rate, then there should be some sort of agreement over, like, will the manufacturer remake it and ship it to you
Mhm.
for free, and how long would they take to do so?
Mhm.
Obviously, the NDA was a really good idea. So that's definitely needs to be there. I would say for NDA, especially when it comes to Chinese manufacturer, I try to make sure that somebody local in China who I trust is signing the NDA, so that,
Mhm.
when something goes wrong, then these manufacturers know that we can actually take legal action locally because we have those local connections.
That's smart. Yeah, that's
Yeah, and I think really the QC and the expected quality is really the most important after NDA.
yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I can send you a sample of a contract after.
Oh
I thought
yeah, I'd
that
love
was
to see
really
that.
helpful. Yeah, cool. So I definitely want to hear more about how you've been doing your marketing. I remember seeing your post on LinkedIn. You were mentioning how, like, one of your first UGC video style reel that you made for Instagram went viral, and that is like
Yeah.
so that is very very much unheard of and really hard to achieve. And I loved how you broke it down in terms of what your learnings were, what kind of reel, how long the reel
Mhm.
should be.
Mhm.
Other than social media content, what are you
Mhm.
doing on the marketing side to make sure people hear about you?
Yeah, I think our efforts could definitely be stronger there. So I am a one-woman show and we're self-funded, so it's a little tight in terms of time and funding. Outside of, social media, we're not really doing that much. So we're testing a couple things, and I think we're going to start doing new things. So we're running a very tight branded search campaign. So that's just to ensure like, hey, we're new to the space. If someone saw our video or heard about us, if they're going to come to Google, they should be able to find us. And a Google ad will allow us to control how we appear since we're probably not ranking very high organically right now. So that's one thing. The second thing is we are actually starting to do events. So understanding like where our customer is going to be. The pet space is really interesting, I'm sure, as you know, because people love their pets, right? And like are willing to spend so much money on their pets. Like I am that person. So there's a couple pet events coming up. One in Vancouver called Day of the Dog. It's Petapalooza slash Day of the Dog. So we're going to be in Vancouver, we're going to be in Santa Monica, and we're going to be in San Diego. So kind of targeting like the West Coast, because I think our product is great for that, especially because it stays like relatively warm throughout the winter, as opposed to on the East Coast. people bulk up, they wear coats, they may not need our product as much. But on the West Coast, I think it's applicable all year round. So yeah, I think just trying to build that relationship with folks in person. We're thinking about potential like partnerships with influencers, although it's honestly like not something we've really tackled yet. I think we want to stay hyper focused.
Mm.
So it is actually a lot of social content. And the third thing I would say is we're starting to also look into retail partnerships. So given like our product that it is a one-time purchase, it's a higher price point, it's more premium. I think we want to be in different places of discovery. So it could be like a really premium pet shop in Mendocino, California, when you're in town visiting and you're kind of in the mood to go buy something, you're in the mood to peruse, we want to be there. That's a great place of discovery. And we really want to be in more premium, whether it's pet or lifestyle stores, independents across the US and Canada.
Nice.
Yep.
That sounds like a really good idea. And the shows that you just mentioned earlier, were those shows that are targeting more consumers?
Yes, they are consumer focused.
Okay, so for the independent channel, then it would be, more business shows.
Yes. Although we're not doing shows there, that's just outreach. So it's like setting up on Fair, cold emails, cold DMs, just trying to get on everyone's radar.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I've one of our earlier podcast guests was John. He was just mentioning how he would really love to learn more about the independent, like
Mhm.
how a brand does sales there. So I'm really curious to hear your learnings there too. Like it
Yeah.
sounds like setting up on a fair is a really good idea. And are there any, channel like players, like middlemen, distributors?
There probably are, but I think that it's a bit too early for us.
Hmm.
So I'd rather build that relationship
One on one.
directly. Yeah. And I think we can gather learnings there too, right? Like, are people responding well to the product? Does it need to be explained? Because that's the other thing. I think our product, we've designed it to look really simple at face value, but there's so many compartments and there's so many hidden features. And I think there's a little bit of learning that needs to happen. So, do we rely on the independents to help us almost be like boots on the ground sales reps, or can we give them something to help assist with that sale?
Yeah, it's smart to go slow and
Yeah.
do things that are not scalable in the early days, so then when it's time to scale, you can run really fast.
Yeah,
And
that's
with these independents, what is their quantity usually? Is it like pretty much one at a time, 10 at a time?
I think you can set that. You can kind of determine like how much you want to sell. For us, I think we're going to be a little flexible in the beginning because again, like it is a higher price point.
Mhm.
So we want to see what the sell through looks like, but we might revise that in the future.
Yeah, that's fair. So you can kind of tell them how many
Yes.
minimum they need to buy, basically.
Yeah, you could set like a
Yeah.
quantity or like a lot of people just do like a price threshold. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
one
So,
to
like,
50.
different prices by tiered
Yeah,
quantity. Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Would you say your time at Google has helped you at all in the branded search campaigns?
Oh yeah, I made it a lot easier to set it up. I knew exactly what to avoid, how to do it right. I think it's actually ironic, coming from a paid search background, and maybe it's because I'm risk averse in some ways, but I have been, I guess, a bit scared to put a lot of money into paid marketing.
How so?
I think it's just until you know what creatives will perform for you, or until you really know what you want to measure against, you can very easily spend a lot of money and not see any
Mm.
return. So I feel like we're still in the early days of just trying to nail our creative, nail our messaging, know how we want to come across before we actually pump money into the engine.
Oh, that's so interesting. And when it's time, what would you say is the biggest metric? Is it conversion? Is it ROAS?
I think ROAS is definitely good to stand against, but also not letting that be too crippling. Because I do think you need to be at a certain stage where you're ready to then spend on upper funnel marketing. So, like, just more awareness campaigns, like maybe it's Meta is spending on Instagram, right? Or spending on like YouTube potentially, where you just want to be get in front of as many eyeballs as you can, but you might not see that direct conversion. So knowing that your ROAS might not be great there, but like if you see a general uplift in sales, that's usually a good sign.
I see. And what do you think about keywords? Do they play a pretty important role in the world of pet carriers, pet bags?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I do think with Google, I mean, there's so many different types of ads that you can run. So I think in the beginning, running really tight, like I said, branded search campaigns, but also running Google Shopping ads. So the ones that have images where you appear, you have to kind of set up your Merchant Center account. But I think it's a very visual shopping experience for customers. So if they're looking for pet carriers or they're looking for bags, it might be the color that draws them. It might be the design. So you want to be able to have like an image pop up there.
Yeah, speaking of assets, I feel like that's such a big thing.
Yeah.
There's so many ways that you can take product photos and product videos. How are you approaching that for your website as well as for your ads?
Yeah, so I think, at the end of the day, when you're starting a company, I think a big part of it is just having fun with it too. And had I not gotten to tech, I probably would have gone down the fashion route. So this was a fun way to kind of bring that back into my life, like really bring some creativity. So with our first campaign photo shoot, I really leaned into like that editorial style that you see with high fashion magazines. So that was a really fun way to portray the pet product or the pet landscape. And that's really more for like general creative assets you might run on your website or as ads. And then in terms of product photography, just having really clear, crisp photos that communicate what's unique and special about your product is really important. And I think for the future, when we have the funds to do more, photo shoots, I still want to maintain that creativity of like, oh, let's just try a different style, really have fun with it, maybe do something that's a bit unexpected, right?
Mm.
But then at the end of the day, you like still want to have really great product photos because they are important on your website, and also making sure you capture video. I think
Mm.
that's something like I wish I did more of when we did our first photo shoot, like really good B-roll footage. Honestly, it was just too busy. It was like way too chaotic a day. But in the future, more video content.
Yeah, that's so true. And there, with every launch, it's going to be a new photo shoot, so there's always the opportunity to do so.
Yeah. I've also heard, so some other founders have told me, we can also do, instead of doing one really big photo shoot, because assets do get tired, throughout the course of the year, start investing in smaller scale photo shoots, but do them more frequently. So maybe once a quarter, do a quick photo shoot just to refresh the images and just keep it exciting for customers.
Oh yeah, that's a really good idea. In you're in Vancouver?
Yes, I am.
Okay. What is your go-to? Is it like you rent a studio and you rent a model and a photographer?
Good question. So we actually no, we just moved like right before I launched the company. So I was actually in Toronto beforehand. So I had friends there and I had just more contacts. We moved right when I launched the company, which was also chaotic. So I'm still trying to get my bearings here in Vancouver and figure out who's who and what can we do. But if I were back in Toronto, what I had done was I did rent a studio. I hired a photographer whose style I liked. So looked at a lot of her Instagram portfolio, and went to her website and saw a lot of great things. And I had friends also bring their dogs along. I did hire some developmental models from agencies. So I don't know if you know what that is, but
No.
basically these are models who are perhaps like younger, or sorry, newer. They also tend to be younger, but new to modeling. So they don't have a ton of experience. They really want to build their portfolio. So they're generally a little bit cheaper, which is works when you're kind of tight on funds.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. What's usually their hourly rate?
Honestly, it was like almost negligible. It was
Wow.
like 150 for 4 hours.
That is crazy.
It might depend on the agency, but that was what yeah,
That
that's
is a really good tip. I'm sure a
yeah,
lot of people will appreciate that.
sure. And also friends, right? Like I think a lot
Yeah,
of
that's
friends are just excited to be part of it and want to help. So one of the models was actually my friend. And I was like, afterwards, I was like, you should really be a model because you're very good at this.
Yeah, you're gonna uncover talent throughout
Yeah,
the
exactly.
process. Yeah, this is really cool. Thank you so much for jumping on the show and really excited to be a part of your growth.
Oh, thanks. And likewise, I think it's really cool what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, good to be connected. And I would like to end with a parting question is if you had unlimited funds, what is the one thing you would invest in right now?
Oh, um, if I had unlimited funds, I there's a couple people that I've been eyeing. I would love to bring them on board to my team. I do think like, there's only so much I can do, and a big part of growing successfully is entrusting people who are a little bit smarter at something else than you are. So that's the first thing. The second is I think if I did have the funds, I would probably spend them on a bit on ads as well. So I would be a little bit more aggressive on the growth front, having like a really robust paid ad strategy. We would probably launch programs to just do more experiential things as well and kind of do the storytelling and make it a really fun experience for people. I think that's what I want to do with Playfield. So yeah, but that's we'll see if that ever happens.
I love that. I'm sure it will.
Oh, thanks. I hope so.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Ivana, for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.